I think it's violence makes more violence. Uh, okay. Didn't one of the prisoners say Abby had been bitten and would die anyway, though? No, the prisoner said Abby tried to escape. She's on the pillars. She's probably already dead. And they said she's been bitten, pointing at Ellie because Ellie had a bite mark on her hand. And then they all raised their guns. So Abby was never bit. Ellie was bit. To me, this game works as a commentary about the human condition, like Black Mirror. Once societal boundaries are loose and removed, humans are selfish and petty, etc. it just it just seems so pointless. Like, it's like we play Ellie, we play Abby, we go back and forth on them, and it's like, yeah, okay, they're both human, they both have made some terrible mistakes, they've both done some terrible things. Don't really know who I'm rooting for here. Like, why are we doing this? And like there at the end, like again, she stabbed Ellie full of holes. She slashed her to ribbons, almost drowned her, and then she's like, "Okay, I got what I needed. You can go." uh, yeah, it's something. I don't know. I like my stories with a happier ending, I guess, or at least something. You know, just something. It's like even if Ellie went back to Jackson and found out that Dina moved in with her parents, or her parents with the kid, and then they meet back up, and Dina maybe hugs her and then slaps her, and Ellie's like, "Oh, I'm ready to get back together now," and Dina's like, "I don't know if we can, but we could be friends." It's just something. Just let Ellie go to Jackson and have a home. Not just her like out in the woods minus two fingers. Uh and nothing which aligns with the story thread, not a 180 pivot with no real closure. Honestly, I think that's by design. You shouldn't be rooting for anyone by the end. It's a story about how revenge can destroy you as a human. Well, that's the whole thing. Is like the first time Allie and Ebby fought, I was rooting for Ellie, and the last time when they were fighting in the water, I was just like this. I was just like, "What the are we doing?" Like the way they laid it out, it just made it feel so pointless. Like it's like they had eroded my ability to care at that point with all the left turns they were taking. Like the stories of violent tragedy akin to Greek tragedy, where the cycle never ends and keeps repeating. Both characters are horrible by the end. They're like black holes that suck everything in and consume it simply because of who they are. Hmm. Mm-mm-mm. Game tried to be deep. I don't know about that. I think it's that Ellie didn't want to go on, but carries an eternal guilt that she could have been or is the savior of humanity. Uh, she could have just invited Abby for a brawl and in the end be like, same time next year. That's the point. It's not a video game. You're not literally supposed to be rooting for either. You spend the first third of the story learning to hate Abby, and the second and third learning to hate Ellie. So by the last third, you hate them both and just want it to end. I really thought that like Ellie was gonna go find Abby in that camp. She's gonna not be able to kill her, and then maybe they like team up to fight the slavers or zombies or something, and they're forced to work together. Maybe they together end up going to that Firefly base that Abby was on the way to, and perhaps like Ellie gets another chance to be like, hey, I've got the cure in me. Any of you smart enough to use it? Yeah, I was thinking that she might be able to like make the sacrifice, if they could get back to that base, but no, it seemed entirely pointless. That would have been nice. Yeah, I don't know. Or if she just like helps her leave and then realize like I can't kill her after all, and then she goes home. Like if they had just like met up like that, she saves her and then just kind of stares at her, and is like complex emotions. I want to kill you, but I can't, and then they just go their separate ways. But that whole fight in the shallow water with the knife, it was silly. It seemed so pointless. I was just sitting there like, what are you doing? Okay. Maybe they get ready to fight at the beach that a clicker shark comes out of the water and they team up to fight it. Wasn't it said in the first game they were trying to make a vaccine, not a cure? No matter what, they couldn't beat it, but could avoid it. The main thing was that the only doctors that knew how to do what they were trying to do was Abby's dad. So unless someone else figured out how to like reverse engineer his research or something, um, even Ellie going to the Firefly base doesn't mean that they could make a cure because they didn't have him. Uh, Cycle would have ended if Ellie killed Abby. No, because Lev might have come back for revenge later. Hmm. Okay, well, that was The Last of Us. That was the last of The Last of Us. Game was gorgeous. Gameplay was fine. We had just recently played Days Gone, and I would say it had a better like looter crafting system, but Last of Us was adequate. It was weird, like the way they did aim. The aim always felt really janky, especially with the bow. When you would pull back the bowstring, it was like the bow did this. But most of the gameplay was fine. The game was gorgeous. Storytelling was pretty good most of the time. Really not a fan of how they decided to end it. It just made the whole story feel completely pointless to me. It's kind of like when we spent hours going through the hospital to get the med kit to saw off Lev's sister's arm, and then she died like an hour later. And it was like, well, I'm so glad we went through all that trouble. You know, it just made like a huge chunk of the game feel pointless. But it's like, okay, well that happens. It's like, okay, if we're trying to imitate life, that freaking happens. But yeah. Okay. Well, that's it. That's my opinion. You don't have to agree with it. I find myself unfulfilled, but it was still a fun journey while we did it. Do you agree with the discourse of part 2, or do you view it as a game worth playing? Okay. I don't know what the discourse of part 2 is. I know a lot of people kind of hated on it. Like, okay, I will say, I guess I'm the kind of person that, like, if I'm playing Ellie, and then, like, I'm introduced to Abby, and Abby's this horrible person that does horrible things to me. The moment it had me play Abby, I was like, I don't want to play her. I don't want to play the antagonist. Like, what? Like, even if she has reasons, but like, they could have introduced reasons for why Abby did what she did by just like finding journal pages or recordings or something like that, and then we could piece together, oh my God, she's the daughter of so and so. That's why she's doing this. Like, just in my own personal opinion, I did not enjoy having to play the antagonist and then bounce back and forth between the two characters. But that's just me. I also am the kind of person that didn't really enjoy watching Game of Thrones because major characters that I would start to like would just dying constantly, and this kind of felt like that. Like half of the people I liked would just get killed in this, and it's just. I guess that's why I usually go for the fantasy genre because it's less realistic. Did Ellie ever actually find out why for Abby? Yeah, she did. Like when Abby showed up at the theater and she ended up injuring Tommy and shooting Jesse. Ellie was like, I know why you killed Joel. I know what he did. I'm the one you want. I'm the reason there's no cure. She said that. So yeah, she did find out everything. I liked Abby's story after a while. Yeah, I mean, it made sense, but yeah. Would you recommend it to other people? Probably not. Like, I would give them a vague thing like, yeah, it's like an amazing story that pulls you in, but I hate how they wrapped everything up in like the 11th hour. So you'll be really pulled in and like it, but then at the end you'll probably be unsatisfied if you have the same thoughts that I do. And then as far as just the gameplay, I wouldn't recommend it just for the gameplay. The gameplay was fine. I didn't hate it. Definitely didn't love it either. It was fine. It was just kind of there to connect the story beats together. There were several reasons people were angry, from Abby not being hot enough to her being too masculine, to the ending and how you feel about it being poor not making sense. Abby's a soldier. Days Gone 2 or Last of Us 3? You asked me that. One of you asked me that when I was like a few hours into The Last of Us, and I was like, well, I don't know. I finished Days Gone 1, and I'm not done with Last of Us yet. So now I would say Days Gone 2. They didn't iterate enough from the first game on gameplay. I mean, they added going prone, jumping, dodging, and the rest of it was pretty much the same, I think. The comments about Abby not being an hourglass-shaped woman were ridiculous. Well, I mean, no one here is saying that. I'm not going to defend that. Abby is just like, you spend the entire first game and 10 hours of the second game bonding with Ellie and Joel. And then suddenly being thrown into playing the enemy of Ellie and Joel. It's just like, why do I care about this person? But I get what they're going for. I guess it just wasn't for me. But again, parts of the journey were really cool, and we made it through to the end. So that was The Last of Us.